is on problem solving using simultaneous equations. Now, when dealing with worded problems and simultaneous equations, your first step is to solve worded problems, read the question carefully, and define the two variables. So we'll look at that first point and we'll use an example. So let's just have a look at our first example. Down here, I got better results for my maths test than my English test. If the sum of the two marks is 164 and the difference is 22, find the mark for each subject. Okay, so our first step is define the two variables. So that means, let's look at our problem. We've got a maths test and an English test. So they're our two variables, the two things we're working with. So I can say, you can use any variable you want. You can use E for English and M for maths, but I'll just say, well, I'll let X equal English, and Y can equal maths. By doing this, I know exactly what my variables represent. And of course, it's not just a subject it's referring to, it's the marks. So if you want to put marks in brackets, because we know algebra in maths means it's a number, an unknown number, and we're trying to find what X is and what Y is, and English marks or maths marks. Our next step is, so we've defined our two variables. Next step is formulate two equations from the information given and number them, and that's it. So we've got to make up or find two equations from the information given to us and number them, as in equation 1 and equation 2. Let's have a look. So it tells us, the first sentence says, I got better results for my maths test than my English test. So at this stage, there is no information that can give us an equation. Let's read the next sentence. If the sum of the two marks is 164, so right here, at that part there, we can clearly see there's an equation. If the sum of the two marks is 164, there's one equation. Let's continue reading. And the difference is 22, there's our second one. It tells us to find the mark for each subject. So in that sentence here, there are our two equations. The first part, let's have a look. If the sum of the two marks is 164, we know sum in maths means times, and the two marks of those subjects. Now, we don't know what the marks are, but we know that X is English and Y is maths. I'll just go back to the page. So the sum of the two marks, so it'll be X for English plus Y for maths, is equal to 164. And there is equation 1. Now we need one more equation to solve this problem. Let's have a look. And the difference is 22. We know difference in maths means take away or subtract. So the difference is 22. So with my two subjects, once again, X for English and Y for maths, the difference between them, if I subtract them, is 22. And that is my equation 2. And now with this information, I can solve this simultaneously to work out what X is and what Y is. You have a go at doing it yourself, and I'll work through it as well. Now, I forgot to mention, with our next step, after we've formulated our two equations from the given information, it tells us to either use elimination or the substitution method to solve the equations simultaneously. So you actually get to decide, are you going to use elimination or substitution? Okay, you can use either one, but always pick the one that will be, I guess, easier for you. So with this problem, if I have a look, there are my two equations. Using substitution won't be too difficult. I just have to make X equal everything or Y equal everything in one of these equations. But because they're lined up already, I'm just going to use elimination. So I'll state what I'm using, just so it's clear. I am using elimination. Now I have to eliminate either the X's or the Y's. I can see that the easier option will be to eliminate my X's. They're both positive. So I've got 1X and 1X. If I subtract them, it should be pretty straightforward, but I'll do my little test. So 1X minus a positive 1X, yes, it gives me 0. So I am going to take away equation 1 from equation 2. So equation 2 from equation 1. So let's go. That's going to eliminate x minus x is 0x. Now here I've got 1y, so 1 minus a negative 1. And that gives me 2. Two negatives make a positive. So I now have 2y equals, and 164 take away 22 gives me 142. And then my final step, divide by 2, that cancels out. So y, we'll just do it over here. So half of 142 is 71. And there I have it. Now, we have to relate this back to the problem. What does y represent? Y represents my maths marks, okay? So it's telling me that my score for my maths test is 71, okay? Now, we have to find our English marks, and to do that, we simply substitute y equals 71 into either equation 1 or equation 2. So I'm just going to substitute it into equation 1. So sub y equals 71 into equation 1. There's my equation 1. So if y is 71, I have x plus 71 equals 164 minus 71 on both sides. And it leaves me with x should equal 93. And there we have it. We have found our 2 marks for those subjects. So with worded problems, you must write a statement to state what you have found. So therefore, you just say the maths test or maths score is y equaled 71, and English score is 93. Okay, and you can do a check. Do these, because look at our problem. We'll go back to our problem. So it says I got better results for my maths test than my English test. So far, our maths score is 71, which is lower than our English score. So that's correct. And then it says the sum is 164. So if I add 71 plus 93, I get 164. So I can see that so far my answer is correct. And of course, the other way of checking, if we look at step 4, it says check your answer by substituting the values obtained for each variable in the original equations. So if we go to the original equations using our results, so we'll go back. There's our original equations. So just pick one. I'll pick the first one because that's usually the easiest one. And instead of x, we got a result of, I'll put this in a different color. So x was our English score, and we got a result of 93. Sorry, of 71. Sorry, I mean 93. There we go. And our y, which was our maths marks, was lower, and we got a score of 71. Now, when you put it into your equation, sorry, I'm not rewriting it because I'm trying to save some space. Both sides should be equal. And we know that 93 plus 71 gives me 164. And when both sides are equal, you know you have the correct solution, okay? So to show that, you would have 164 equals 164. And that proves that what we have found is correct. So if a question asks you to check by substitution, that's all you got to do. Get your results, put them in one of the equations, the original equations, pick the easiest one, and if both sides equal each other, you have done the right thing. Let's try our next question. Now, this is a bit more trickier, but we'll see how we go. Now, from a hardware store, I bought some nuts and bolts to finish a project. I did not buy the same number of nuts and bolts, as some of the bolts needed 2 nuts each. I bought 25 nuts and bolts in total. So keep this sentence in mind. I think there's an equation there. If each nut cost 12 cents and each bolt cost 25 cents, and the total purchase cost $4.30, how many nuts and how many bolts did I buy? All right, so I want you to have a go first at writing 2 equations. This one is a little bit different, but see how you go. Now, you should have, before writing your equations, you should have done the first step, and that is identify the two variables. What will they represent? Okay, that's our first step. So I'm going to use x and y again. So with my problem, I'll bring the problem back up. What are we dealing with? What two things are we dealing with? We're dealing with nuts and bolts. So I can say x can equal the number of nuts and y equals the number of bolts. So let's do that. So x equals number of nuts and y equals number of bolts. Oop. Okay, and remember, variables represent an amount. So number of nuts and bolts. That's done. And now let's, hopefully you've come up with two equations, but this one was harder and you'll see why in a second. Okay, so I did not buy the same number of nuts and bolts. That's fine. No equation there. Here's the equation. I bought 25 nuts and bolts in total. Okay, so we know total of something can mean addition as well. So to show that first sentence, I bought 25 nuts and bolts in total, I would have, well, x is my nuts, so x plus y gave me a total of 25. So that's my equation 1. That was pretty straightforward, okay? In that small sentence there. Now, the next equation is a little bit trickier. Let's have a look. If each nut cost 12 cents and each bolt cost 25 cents, and the total purchase cost was $4.30, so I spent a total of, or this person spent a total of $4.30, how many did they buy of each one? Now with this equation, I just want to, before I show you the equation, if I have, for example, if I go shopping and let's see, I want to buy some, some teddy bears. And these teddy bears, they're cute and small and they cost $2 each, okay? So if I buy, I don't know, 5 teddy bears, you can work it out. How much is it going to cost if they're $2 each? Just times it by 2, it'd be $10. But to show that as sort of an equation, you can say, for example, P for price will equal to $2 per teddy bear, okay? So if I buy 3 teddy bears, the price will equal 2 times 3, which gives me a total of $6, okay? So the value of, when you're dealing with value, you need to show that value in front of the variable. In this example, the teddy bears cost $2, so 2 times the number of teddy bears I buy, okay? So whenever you see dollar signs and value, it should give you a hint that one of your equations is going to show that value in front of the variable. And that's what we're going to do next. So I'll just rub this off. So let's see. Go back to our problem. If each nut costs, what's the value? 12 cents. Now, I don't know how many nuts I'm buying that they've bought, but each one costs 12 cents. So I know nuts is represented by x. So I'll have 12x, 12 times the number of nuts I buy. And then each bolt costs 25 cents. So plus 25y, which represents the number of bolts, came to a total purchase cost of $4.30. So equals $4.30. Don't write your dollar sign because we're doing it in an equation. And there's equation 2. Okay, so the only reason why this was harder is because your values, you have to have 12x to show each nut costs 12 cents and each bolt costs 25 cents. Now see how we got $4.30? You can work with decimals, but what you can do as a trick is leave it as cents. So if I write $4.30 as cents, it's just 430, okay? And then later, just divide by 100 to go back to your dollars and cents. But for now, I've got 430 cents. It's easier to work without decimals. Now that we have our two equations, it is your choice to use elimination or substitution. If I look at these problems, I can use elimination. It will involve some working out. For example, I have to make the x's, the coefficient of x the same, or the coefficient of y the same, which wouldn't be too difficult, but I'm going to do something different. I'm going to use substitution with this one, just for something different. And to do that, I have to make y equal everything or x equal everything. I'll use my first equation because it's pretty easy. All I got to do is, so using my first equation, I'm going to make x equal everything. So x is subject. So I'll have x equals, I have to minus y on this side, minus y on that side. So x will equal 25 minus y. So I rearranged equation 1. Okay, so instead of having what I started off with, I'll rub it off just to save some space. I now have x equals 25 minus y. And I'm going to substitute 25 minus y for x in my second equation. Okay, so I'll just show that. So remember, with your working out, you need to explain what you're doing with each step. So my next step is sub x equals 25 minus y. I'll put brackets around it to remind myself, into equation 2. And I'll just put 2 like that. And I'll start it on the next page. All right, so off I go. So replace that. So I'm going to have 12 and then bracket 25 minus y plus 25y equals 430. Now I have to expand. So 12 times 25 and 12 times negative y. So 12 times 25 is 300 minus 12y. And then plus 25y equals 430. Now I'll simplify what I can. I've got minus 12y plus 25y. So we'll have 300. So minus 12 plus 25 is a positive 13y equals 430. And now minus 300 on both sides. So minus 200, so 13y equals, what's 430 minus 300? Should be 130. And finally, divide by 13. Divide by 13. So y should equal 10. So now y equals 10, we know y represents, in our problem, number of bolts. So the number of bolts this person has purchased so far is telling us is 10 bolts. Okay, so now we're going to substitute this into either equation 1 or equation 2 to find the number of nuts they purchased. Okay, so pick the easiest equation. So I'm using equation 1. So substitute 10 in, when y equals 10 into equation 1, so we have x plus 10 equals 25. You could have used the equation we rearranged as well, but it's the same thing. So x equals 25 minus 10. So x will equal 15. And we're done. So therefore, just write your solution. What have we found? The number of nuts, you can say purchased, but I'll just save time. Number of nuts was, so just double check what our variables represented. Just go back. So x is nuts and y is bolts. So number of nuts, we got x equals 15. And number of bolts, y equaled, double check, y equaled 10. Number of bolts was or is 10. And there we have it. Now, of course, you can check your results. So if x is 15 and y is 10, put it in the equation here. I'll just do it up here. If x is 15 plus y, which is 10, do both sides equal 25? What's 15 plus 10? We end up with 25 equals 25. Always do that quick check. So yes, we have the correct answer. Now our next problem, I'll start you off, but I want you to finish this problem yourself. So Ken has 5 lemons and 3 oranges in his shopping trolley, and the cost of the fruit is $3.50. Okay, so we're dealing with value again. Barbie, with 2 lemons and 4 oranges, pays $2.10 for her fruit. So in those two sentences, we can see two equations. And it asks us, with that information, how much did they pay for each fruit, for each type of fruit? So they've obviously bought it from the same shop. And we've got to work out, okay, how much do lemons cost and how much do oranges cost, depending on what they've purchased. So our first step is to identify our variables. So for this one, I've said L is equal to the cost of lemons. I haven't used O for oranges because it can look like 0. So I said X is equal to the cost of oranges. Okay, but L is pretty straightforward. It can link with lemons. So our first step is identify our variables. And now, can you come up with two equations from this information? So in our first sentence, Ken has 5 lemons and 3 oranges. Okay, and how much did it cost in total? It costs $3.50. Okay, so because we're dealing with value, we'll have 5L for lemons plus 3, instead of O, I've got X for oranges, is equal to a total of $3.50. I'm going to write 350 cents. Okay, so just times it by 100, but later on in your answer, divide it by 100 to have it in dollars and cents. Just don't forget that. So remember, 5 times, we don't know how many lemons he bought, so we've got 5L plus, and we don't know how many oranges he bought, but we know that we don't know the cost of the lemons, we don't know the cost of the oranges, but he bought 5 lemons and 3 oranges, and it came to a total of, well, in this case, 350 cents. Now do the same thing with Barbie's purchase. She bought 2 lemons and 4 oranges and paid $2.10. So she had 2 lemons plus 4 oranges, so X for oranges, and she had $2.10. Times it by 100 to get 210 cents. And now you can see that you've got your two equations. This one is harder because it's going to have more working out. Now for this one, I would use elimination, okay? But we have to make the coefficients of L the same or X the same. Either one's going to involve working out, so I'll get you to decide, okay? And with this problem, at the end, don't forget to turn cents back into dollars. Okay, and for this, I'll give you the solution so you can check if you got the right thing. Your final answer should have been, lemons should have come to 55 cents. Remember, don't forget to divide by 100 to go back to cents and dollars. And what are we? Oranges, so I had X, should have come to, let me double check, 25 cents. So that's your solution. So that's a C, 25 cents and 55 cents. If you didn't get that, you may have made a mistake and need to go back.